Revenge, Book 2 in the New World series. Written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie.
Are you all out of your goddamn minds? Bernstein exploded. We're in the middle of a war here. We don't know what the hell is going on out there. And you want to arrest the only senior soldier we have left to protect us? And just because some chick says he's beat on her? We don't even have that limey sergeant to throw at the sons of bitches. Can't this wait?
Mr. Bernstein is right, to a point, agreed Mother Sarah. Though I certainly wouldn't dismiss anyone as some chick.
She frowned pointedly at her fellow American.
But I can't believe there's one word of truth in this allegation. Even if there were, this most assuredly is not the time.
Absolutely right. Patel added his weight to her statement. We are all in terrible danger. The enemy could still strike at us any minute. Major White is our only hope, and I, for one, trust him implicitly. White, inasmuch as it was possible for a senior military man, seemed to slouch. He felt like the adolescent Maposaurus that invaded the pod a week ago, completely surrounded and at a loss to understand or defend himself adequately from these pygmy aggressors. Sarah watched him with growing concern, and was about to speak again when Coxedge stepped forward.
People of the New World, she addressed them grandly. The way I see it, we must down arms, not escalate this struggle. We've been told there is an enemy. How do we know they're our enemy? All I see is a world full of monsters. Surely the few humans on this planet should not be fighting one another. They're animals, not monsters, you stupid Kai.
Natalie Pearson was on her feet, red in the face, quite uncharacteristically enraged.
The only monster in here is the one trying to turn us all against one another. This man, Major Ford White, has never done anything but risk his life to help us over and over again. If I could finish.
Coxedge spoke over the zoologist's outburst, glaring pointedly at Patel and Sarah.
The military and their sycophants have made a shocking mess of this whole situation from the very beginning. It was, in all likelihood, people like them who caused the other people to attack us in the first place, by not allowing them a voice. Is it any wonder the disenfranchised turn to such extreme measures to make their point, when the system always ignores them so freely?
The councillors caught a depressing number of hears from the crowd.
Bernstein was aghast. What the
Funnily enough,
Sarah shouted above the growing din,
Captain Douglas was dead set against the military being in control of this mission from the start. Hardly the actions of a power-crazed despot. We, all of us, forced him to be part of the leading council. Why? Because we needed his expertise, strength, and experience if we were to stand even a cat-in-hell's chance of surviving our predicament. That's why. We all voted for him.
Not all, interjected Coxedge.
Sarah's eyebrows rose in surprise.
So she was the one who didn't vote for James. I always assumed it was Bernstein. Just shows you how wrong you can be. Well, an overwhelming Democratic majority did vote for him, and he never let us down, never once. He sacrificed himself for us. Does anyone doubt this? And he is a military man.
He certainly was a military man, Coxedge rejoined. He practically started a war to save the life of one of his own, the then Commander Baines. He never stopped to consider the ramifications for the civilian populace.
This was all too much for Bernstein, who rose to his feet again.
What the
Furthermore,
continued Mother Sarah, unperturbed by either outburst,
these people you're suggesting we lay down our arms before, these disenfranchised, as you call them, are a bunch of super-wealthy Nazis bent on erasing the human race from time so they can set up a new civilization for their buddies.
No, Coxedge hit back. You're confusing two separate issues there. The first is that we only know this.
She emphasized the word, breaking out the inverted comma bunnies.
Because the military told us it was so. The second is that if the other people are indeed militaristic, and we have no hard proof of that yet... They sent a warship!
Someone roared from the crowd.
This is a dangerous place, she deflected. They too have a right to protect themselves.
But if they are militaristic, as our military and their lackeys are suggesting, then surely setting one military against another can only ever result in a single outcome: war, and it's peace we need.
Sarah was flabbergasted.
You're seriously telling us that fighting back against an unprovoked attack is somehow wrong? We should just let them kill us? Or at least all the folks here who aren't on their friends list? I'm suggesting that soldiers only know how to hurt people. Major White proved that earlier by attacking me, simply because he had not the wit to counter my arguments in a civilized manner.
A low, disgruntled murmur rolled through the crowd.
Maybe we should turn the other cheek, Mother Sarah, at least until we know their intentions. Isn't that what the Bible teaches us? God teaches us to forgive those who trespass against us. He does not advocate standing idly by while innocents are put to the slaughter. Evil must be faced and stopped.
Coxedge raised her voice once more to cut through the hubbub, stating reasonably,
I'm simply saying that we haven't explored any peaceful options with the strangers yet. The strangers whom we attacked.
What the
First light. Schultz sat atop the bank, throwing stones at the wreckage in the valley below. Her hatred was such that she could barely rein it in. Every nerve ending begged to dole out summary executions to the incompetent fools around her. She breathed deeply, twisting the ring pull on a can of German beer, salvaged from the ruined ship. Ring pull design had evolved long before she was born, to specifically eradicate the need to separate them from the fully recyclable can, thus creating an outlet for nervous agitation. She twisted it further, until metal fatigue caused it to snap, then flung it down the embankment into a tree against all the odds still standing after last night's disaster. The tiny piece of machined metal fell through the canopy, sticking fast in a flow of resin that seeped from a wound where a branch had been torn free the night before. I will kill them for this outrage, she thought vengefully. Meritus kept his distance, similarly outraged. It was all he could do not to execute Heidi Schultz on the spot for incompetence. Were it not for the chance that the other ships in the Dawn Fleet might still pick up their beacon and find them, he would have. Incensed, he raged in the privacy of his own mind. A spineless people, she said. Leaderless without Douglas, she said. Pah! And where is Douglas? Gone. Our key into the new world. And more importantly, its pod has escaped. We still have Lloyd, of course. The man seems indestructible, but he's a minor player. I need Douglas. However, he knew that, at the moment, what they really needed was to gather themselves and count their losses. The last word's complement stood at 156 men and women before the catastrophe. Schultz had brought another 8 with her, including herself and excluding Douglas. 61 of them had been killed last night, plus another 27 seriously injured, either in the ship's destruction or during the stampede prior to it. Their ability to make war had been seriously curtailed. They retained 3 of 4 tracked personnel carriers, of which only 1 was armed. Only 1 of their 3 orbital attack ships survived, and they still had the shuttle captured from the New World, along with a few hand weapons and whatever the survivors carried with them. He still had teams exploring the dangerous wreck below, in the hope of ascertaining what else, if anything, could be salvaged quickly. Meritus stood and stared east, wondering what fate had befallen the New World. He felt sure the shell he fired had found its mark. It would have been virtually impossible to miss from that range, and with the angle he had when the ship turned over. Had he destroyed her? He hoped not. But what else could he have done under the circumstances other than lash out? It had looked like the end of the mission, and very probably the end of them. Now things were changed. Salvaging her would be his only chance to get free of the Schultz's insanity, something he now felt sure he must do, and begin again. His way. He turned once more to glower at Heidi's back as she sat uselessly, casting stones down upon the wreck of his ship. His ship. Meritus unclipped his sidearm to check it was fully loaded, then with an almost superhuman effort, returned it to its holster. Unable to tear himself away, he continued to glare, concentrating his loathing to a single point, like magnified sunlight on a leaf. "Your days are numbered, my girl." Douglas awoke. Having walked through much of the night, he had eventually succumbed to fatigue just before dawn. Now, looking at the sun, he guessed he had slept 2, maybe 3 hours, 4 meters above the ground, and in the arms of his conveniently shaped cradle halfway up a tree, he stretched awkwardly. How he had slept in that position he would never know. He rubbed his neck. Total exhaustion compounded with depression, he supposed. Still, no time for that now. Whoever had crashed that ship needed him. He was probably the only human soul who saw where it went. Shaking himself out of this torpor proved easier than expected. It is remarkable how quickly the effects of sleep evaporate when one awakens covered in scorpions the size of chihuahuas. He stood, shaking and batting himself mercilessly before half scrambling, half jumping from his tree. "Get with the program, Douglas," he chunted to himself. "You're no camped in the borders now, laddie." Topping the ridge where he had spent the night, he stood, he surveyed, he pondered. He suddenly needed to go. Stranded in a jungle full of dinosaurs, he knew with absolute certainty that he would never, ever again take the humble lavatory and cubicle ensemble for granted, not to mention soft and, most importantly, absorbent loo roll. From his vantage point, he could see the twin peaks the escape pod had flown between the previous evening, and after a brief discomfort break, he set off to follow. It was a hard march, especially in the growing heat and humidity of the day, though crossing a stream of crystal-clear mountain water allowed him to take a basic wash and drink his fill. Unfortunately, he had no means of carrying water with him, so knew it would be but a temporary comfort. The peaks were mostly bare rock, but there were seams of rusty iron running through them. Some even bore a few tenacious bushes and plants that clung to life within the crevices, breaking up the largely grey with a little green. Maybe he would find a little water too in such places. The shoulder between the two peaks was peaty and more verdant, covered in low-growing scrub and ferns. He aimed for the middle and, rustling his way through, eventually crested the top. The valley below was forested, rising again to the north. The mountain opposite topped out a few 100 meters below his current vantage point, its summit rounded. It seemed the largest among a range of rolling hills that, as far as he could see, filled the heart of a huge circle of rocky pinnacles. Had this been the time of man, they would doubtless have been given the cliched name of Dragon's Teeth, or Killer Dinosaur Teeth, he thought darkly. The crash site must be hidden the other side of that rounded mountain. He had carefully observed the angle taken by the little craft after it navigated between the peaks, a course that must surely have either crashed it into the mountain opposite or allowed it to slide down the other side. There was no obvious sign of a crash site, so he hoped for the latter. If the other side had a good long slope, the pilot may have survived, assuming they gauged their descent correctly. All ifs and maybes he knew, but judging by the dogfight, whoever it was knew how to fly. Douglas shook his head. He was not sure how, but he knew it was Jill Baines. Who else would have tried something that crazy, obviously looking for him? Who else would have attacked the last word at all? He scratched his stubble. "I hope she's all right," he said aloud as he set off down into the valley. Light, or perhaps more accurately, less dark. Movement? Maybe. Baines could barely open her eyes. Everything hurt. A weight pressed down on her chest, causing her to groan. The darkness swallowed her once more. Light. Black graded to red. She was now looking. This was an improvement, even if she merely viewed the back of her eyelids. Awareness returned. The weight on her chest was gone, though she remained unsure of where she was. Vaguely, she checked for her sidearm. It seemed a sensible place to start. It was gone. Heaving herself into a more upright sitting position, the room, if indeed it was a room, spun madly for a moment, and she collapsed once more into unconsciousness. Light. This time she was sure. It was definitely sunlight. A rustling? Yes, ditto on definitely. Someone was checking her pockets. "Hey!" she cried out. "Hush now. Remain calm," someone said, and that someone sounded male, yet quite elderly. "The hell I will! Who are you? What happened? You're robbing me?" "Questions, questions," the irritatingly calm voice replied genially. "I'm trying to help you, girl. Now please, keep still for a moment longer." "Where's my gun?" "We have it." "We?" "Please calm yourself, Jill." This second voice was certainly female, and also elderly. "You know me?" "Oh yes," replied the man. "We remember you. Well, I do. Now, we're going to try and move you onto this stretcher. Bear with us. We're a bit creaky these days," he chuckled. With a little help from Baines, the old man and woman, she was not yet sure if they were a couple, managed to slide her onto the stretcher. With great effort, they lifted and stepped out of the wrecked lifeboat. Once outside, Baines could see the long trail her little craft had trenched out of the hillside, before finally crashing into a small copse. The main tree line began lower down the slope. She had been lucky. Those trees were much larger. Had she hit those first, her vessel would have likely been smashed to pieces and her with it. Lowering Baines to the ground, the man threw a rucksack around his shoulders, and lifting her once more, they set off. They moved slowly and carefully down the slope, which was perhaps unsurprising, given their respective ages, towards what appeared to be a long, low hill covered with dense foliage. Baines felt guilty, being carried by a couple of pensioners, even if they had stolen her treat bars from the lifeboat's emergency rations. However, they seemed wiry and fit enough despite their years. Pain stabbed at her, and flitting between consciousness and oblivion, she remembered little else of the journey. When she awoke again, it was to a shock. She was alone, and lying in a comfortable bed within the New World's infirmary. What the hell? Slowly adjusting, she began to notice little discrepancies, small things at first, the position of a console on the wall, the orientation of the scanner bed. Flanagan never moved his sickbay around, always extolling the virtues of being able to put his hands on things, even in the pitch black. He had certainly been tested and proven correct on several occasions recently, but all this only added to Baines's confusion. How could this be? The main hatch into sickbay hissed gently open, and the old man strode in from the corridor. Noticing she was awake, he approached, offering his hand. "Hello again, Jill. It's been a long time. A very long time." "Why? How long have I been out?" He chuckled lightly. She recognized that laugh and for the first time scrutinized him closely. Her eyes widened, incredulous. "Commander Morecambe Hetfield?" His smile had just a hint of sadness. "Don't mind if I park my old bones, do you?" he asked conversationally, sitting on the side of her bed. "I'm 78, you know." "More? Is it really you? How is this possible? How come you weren't with the Newfoundland?" He appeared uncertain how to answer. "But I was. Am," he corrected. "You're aboard the Newfoundland, Jill." "Oh," moaned Baines, as the room began to spin again. Douglas was moaning too, as he grumbled and stumbled up the other side of the forested valley. 100 million years ago, on the other side of the world, and I'm still taking the high road. Damn, but it's hot. He stopped to catch a breath. Once still, he could hear skittering coming from all around him. The small sounds of cracking twigs and rustling ferns gave little away, but listening intently now, he could tell he was being surrounded. "Oh no," he whispered. Gently, very gently, he slid Lieutenant Hemming's sidearm from his belt and removed the safety. A small dinosaur, about the size of a spaniel, hopped from between the ferns and chirruped. Douglas slumped. Sighing with relief, he replaced the pistol's safety. The little creature bobbed and swayed slightly, sniffing the air between them. It was clearly unsure what to make of him. Like a bald eagle, its head was scaly skin, but beginning from a brightly coloured ruff at its neck, the rest of the little body was covered in a fluffy plumage. Sticking out straight at the rear, the creature's stiff tail ran to scales again. In a bizarre way, it put Douglas in mind of a double-ended chicken drumstick. The feathers were a mixture of blues and aquamarines from the neck down to the rump, but the skin at the top of its neck was purple, grading up into the reds and oranges that coloured its head. The tail was also russet, with 3 distinct red circles near the tip. Douglas smirked. "I hope that doesn't make you a third Dan." He was about to replace his gun, but the sound of his voice seemed to unnerve the little creature. Douglas stooped slightly, to appear less threatening. "Hey there," he said kindly. "I didn't mean to startle you." At about 1.5 meters in length and maybe 40 centimeters in height, it was certainly a striking, arguably even beautiful little animal. Douglas approached very slowly, not wishing to frighten the dinosaur away. He need not have bothered. As he stepped closer, he noticed the impressive sickle claw on the second toe of each foot. The animal tapped them on the earth, as if in agitation. Douglas tried desperately to recall Tim's dinosaur class. Frowning, he regurgitated, "Buitreraptor?" It came as no great surprise that the little animal could neither confirm nor deny this. It merely flicked the tip of its red-banded tail very deliberately. Douglas felt sure he had it now. What did the lad say? Although small, these creatures were extremely... The dinosaur practically finished the sentence for him by opening its jaws. With gums pulled back into a snarl, its jagged and very sharp-looking teeth competed with mad little reptilian eyes to complete a practiced look of murderous insanity. "Dangerous," Douglas finished flatly, with the supplementary, "Oh crap." Buitreraptor hopped forward, posturing. "Whoa!" Douglas cried out, involuntarily stepping back. Worse still, he had just remembered the rest of Tim's warning, something about hunting in... Once again, the raptors were ahead of him as 6 of the first animal's packmates arrived, encircling him. Horrified by his abrupt change in circumstances, Douglas spun warily, trying to keep them all in sight. His mind wished he had Tim with him, to tell him what to do, though his conscience was glad the boy was safe, anywhere but here. He expected an attack from all directions, and was pleasantly surprised when the dinosaurs regrouped suddenly, further up the hill in front of him. Then they were gone. A frantic rustle through the bushes, and he was alone again. He blew out a huge sigh, bending with hands on his knees. That was close, and weird. However, the raptor's rationale soon became clear when he heard the sliding, scraping sound very definitely from behind him. And if he was not mistaken, above him too. Oh crap! His second curse was barely a whisper. He stood completely still, took a deep breath, let it out, and dove. Basic training took over, and with the pistol still in his right hand, he reached forward, rolling along his arm and across his shoulder to leap to his feet, facing back the way he had come. Bringing both arms up for a double-handed pistol grip, he fired.
Revenge, Book 2 in the New World series. Written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. New installments are uploaded weekly. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like or comment. Visit the link in the description for free New World companion stories, available for download as ebooks.